visitors and family. Thank you guys for being here with us today. Interesting song, actually a really good song. Appreciate you, my guy. I wanted to kind of start off this message with that song, because it is Father's Day, but it's also, I got a lot of towels going on up here, but it's also Man's Mental Health Month, right? And one of the things that, if you was listening, you kind of catch on is that a lot of that you might have heard those men specifically talking about had to deal also in the realm of fatherhood, in the realm of family, in the realm of the burden of and the weight of, being a man in general, but then being a man as well as dealing with just being a dad and all that comes, and the responsibility, while also at the same time recognizing that responsibility, but not always feeling heard, feeling seen, or feeling appreciated. And so I wanted to start with that because I really pray that not just this month, but then just also in light of Father's Day and fathers, good fathers, not people who had children, but fathers that didn't run from their responsibility, that doesn't run from the responsibilities no matter how hard it is, and that sticks in there, that figures out a way to get up the next day, that figures out a way to get the bills paid, that figures out a way to get it done, that figures out a way to love and discipline and hug and cry and do all of those things, man, that we would, as a community, really be intentional to show appreciation. Be thoughtful, be intentional, be considerate, be planful. Do all of the things to really make sure that those fathers, not that I say the same thing when it comes to mothers, like not that we need an applause for doing what we're supposed to do, but it feels good sometimes to get one, right? And whether we get the applause or not, we good fathers get up and get it done anyway. And I just believe that in the world that we're in, and I love our mothers and I love our women, but you guys ask for your applause and you make sure that you get it and that you're seen and that you express that you want it. And in the same way, do that for the men, the fathers that are present and active and getting it done. Advocate for them. Make sure they know that they're seen. Hug them. Tell them you see them. Tell them you appreciate them. Right? It goes a long, long way. And so, if you're a father, stepfather, soon-to-be father, just go ahead and stand up real quick. Father, stepfather, soon-to-be father. And so, God, I just bless these men. I encourage these men, Lord. I just pray, Lord, that they would feel that, and even if sometimes we feel unseen and feel unheard, Father, I just pray that they would feel appreciation. Lord, I pray, God, and I bless these men, Lord, that even when it's hard, Lord, they continue to push. They continue to fight. They continue to take the mantle and the responsibility of being a father. Lord, I pray, Lord, that they know their worth. They know they value, Lord. They feel it, Father. I pray, God, that they have a strong community and they surround themselves with men who they can express themselves and be vulnerable with. Father, I pray for every negative thought of worth and value, Lord, that may creep into their minds, Lord, that it be silenced by the truth of your word, by the truth of who they are in you and how you see them. Father, I thank you that they stayed. I thank you that they fought. I thank you that they love intentionally, sacrificially. Lord, I pray that every sacrifice that's been made that hasn't even been known by others that has been made, Father, that they would know that it was not in vain. Every opportunity they passed up, every trip they didn't take, every time they didn't get themselves something because they had to put the family first, Father, I pray, Lord, that they would know that they are appreciated. And that rather they get pats on the back or an applause from anybody, Lord, that they keep going knowing that you are the one who sees them. You are our accountability. And so, Lord, I just bless these men today. I thank you for these men today, Father. And I pray, God, that you continue to strengthen them and help them press, Lord. And also, as always, with every time of celebration, there's also a time of grief. And so, Lord, right now, for anybody who is celebrating this Father's Day in the memory of their father, Lord, I pray for them. I pray, Father, that they would be comforted by you who can only comfort. Lord, I pray that the memories will satisfy the pain, and that it would cover their pain, and that it would bring them laughter and joy, and that, Father, while they may not be able to hug and to see and to take out to eat, Father, that they're still able to celebrate the life that their father had and gave them and how he loved them. And so, Father, comfort them, Lord. I especially just lift up, my brother Nob and Hadassah, Lord, as it's just been a short while since Pop Darby transitioned, Lord. And so I pray as they acknowledge this holiday for the first time without him, Lord, that you would also meet them, comfort them, encourage them, strengthen them, be with them. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, today, family, we're going to continue in our series in the book of Proverbs. And we're going to look at Proverbs 6, 20 through 23. If you're a guest, we've been walking verse by verse through this book in this series called Acquiring Wisdom in the book of Proverbs. And I thought it's fitting on Father's Day to continue in our series because of the fact that when you read Proverbs, you notice that the first 9 chapters of Proverbs are written as a father communicating to his son, giving his son instructions, giving his son wisdom, giving his son instructions and things that he can take with in life so that he could avoid the avoidable pitfalls. Somebody say avoidable pitfalls. Avoidable is critical in this conversation because life will happen. It's inevitable. Life will happen. We will hit hardships. It's just part of life. And we learn and we grow from some of those things, and they're needed to learn and grow from those things. It's needed sometimes that we do have to bump our head, even in our spiritual life. Part of our sanctification journey comes with sometimes having to hit rock bottom so that we will put things around our lives to never go back there. Sometimes the hard road is needed, and it is a pathway to our perfection. But not all pitfalls have to happen. I think we can be honest that for some of us, a lot of the pitfalls that we experience in this life is not one of necessary, but one of arrogance. Arrogance in what? Arrogance in that someone instructed us, but we thought, I'm good. I know better. I'm smarter. My dad, I was raised by my father. My mom left. I was raised by my dad. And as great as a father as my dad was, I always tell people, I said, my dad worked really, 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 really hard. Met my dad when I was 5, and technically because he had just got out of jail for cocaine distributions and all of the stuff he was into. And I remember he gets out, and he chooses to change his entire life, start a business, and all of this stuff because he was like, I got to raise my kids. Their mom's left, I got to raise my children. And with that, he worked really, really hard to give me a great life, right? Everybody, one of my dude, KJ, he know my story and everything like that, and I never forget one day we was riding around. I don't remember what we were doing, man, but he looked at me, and he said, Tanks, you got people fooled. I said, why you say that? He's like, man, I thought you had like this gutter life, got it out the mud. Like, he's like, man, he was like, you lived a good life. I said, I never said I lived out the mud life. Who told you that? He's like, well, your testimony. I said, my testimony was a result of not listening. My dad worked really hard. I had everything I wanted in life. I never asked for nothing. I had everything. I wanted the very things that he was trying to take us out of. And so I chose to go back into the streets. I chose to get into the street life. I chose to sell drugs. I chose to do burglaries and all of that stuff that landed me in jail, 3 felonies before I was 16. Like, I made all of those decisions. But I had a good home. But I didn't want to listen to my dad. And he would always say to me every time he had to go get me out of jail, even when I was an adult, my dad always said, I ain't getting you out. And I'm like, you'll be down here. Sure enough, he pull up. It's the last time, boy. And I'm like, well, hopefully. But one of the things he would always say is, he's like, what's wrong with you? He's like, man, I worked hard to give you a different life. Why you keep doing this foolish stuff? And it was just, I don't want to listen. I wanted to do it my way. I wanted to chase what my brothers, I got a lot of siblings, what my brothers and my cousins and them was doing, instead of heeding what you were trying to instill in me, so that I can live a life that was completely different from the life he had to live, and my uncles had to live, and my siblings had to live, and my cousins had to live. And many of us got that same testimony, right? Many of us know, no matter how many times we know verses like 1 Corinthians 10 and 12, right? If anyone think he is standing, take heed, lest he fall. We know those verses. We quote those verses. We read those verses, and yet and still we think we're standing and we don't take heed. We think we good enough. We think we strong enough. We think that was just going to be your testimony, and so we choose to do it another way. But Solomon pleads with his son over and over again not to be that person. And all throughout these first 9 chapters of Proverbs, every time he wants to really stress this to his son, as he's about to give him something that is deeply, deeply impactful in his life, he always calls his son to remember and to not comply. Proverbs 6, 20 and 23. My son, comply with the commandments of your father, and do not ignore the teachings of your mother. Bind them continually on your heart. Tie them around your neck. When you walk, they will guide you. When you sleep, they will watch over you. And when you awake, they will talk to you. For the commandment is a lamp, and the teaching is a light. And rebuke for discipline are the way of life. The title of this message is A Plea from a Father's Heart. And I titled it this way because when you read words like my son comply, my son obey, my commandments, my instructions, that can sound real militant. But the reality is, us fathers know that while it can sound militant, it is actually deeply rooted in a deep desire and care and concern for our children to walk a different life. It's not so much a drill sergeant as it is a father with great love for his child that is pleading, almost begging, my son, please listen to me. Listen to my instructions. Because my words, they are meant to guide and protect you as you journey through the raging storms that we sometimes call life. It's that plea of a father. And many of us are that pleading father, or we've been that pleading father. I'm that pleading father. I got 5 kids, and so I know the reality. That this command or this desire to comply is not rooted in militant, it's rooted in a real deeply rooted compassion for your children to hear you and listen and avoid avoidable pitfalls. And I got big kids, and so it gets the plea gets more intense the older they get, right? Like it's like, okay, you're about to go to college now. Listen to me. you about to go drive for the first time. You about to have your first night out. Like, listen to my words closely. It's the first boyfriend and the first date and the first day of school, right? It's understanding that they're about to go out and be independent of you, and that you so desperately want them to remember and take words with you that would make the day or the thing that they're about to go out there and do not become a trap for destruction. And so the pleas and intensify, and in this world that we live in with all of these strange teachings, it's hey, listen to me. The world is going to say a lot of stuff. But let your Father's voice be the one that instructs you in the way of life. Pleading with them to choose godly truth over worldly lies. A father's plea to comply comes directly from his heart's desire to keep his children from the path of destruction. And I want to stress that this morning to moms and women and children, that the older big kids is in here, the other ones, they in there, so they're not going to hear it anyway. But I want to stress that this morning. That is rooted in a heart's desire to keep our children off the path of destruction. Why do I want to stress that? Because our communication skills ain't always the best. We know. And our heart often gets confused with control or restrictive. And sometimes it's viewed as discipline, and then many times it might be. But a good father really just deeply desires for their children to have a good life and avoid the avoidable, say avoidable, pitfalls. And with that, we understand that to not have instructions or to ignore instructions does just that. Proverbs 10:17 says, one who is on the path of life follows instructions, but one who ignores a rebuke goes astray. For Solomon, the path of the destruction is not just worldly, but primarily is rooted in choosing the path of God versus the path of the world. Yeah, in one sense, the wisdom of Solomon is just good for life. Absolutely. But in another sense, his words are rooted in training up a child in the ways of the Lord. And he might not be verbatimly quoting the law, but every instruction that he gives is anchored in the law. Because remember, wisdom is the practical living out of what it is that God has said. The wisdom literature teaches us how to practically do what the law has instructed. And so everything that Solomon says is rooted in the word of God. He's trying to raise his child up or train his child up to follow after the Lord and not the world. So one thing I want to say to us as fathers this morning is, as fathers, make sure that we are instructing our children according to the word of God above everything else. This means there is a worldly way and there is a godly way. And sometimes what is good wisdom for the world ain't good with God. Example, I remember the first time my son got into a fight. The dad in me, did you win? I'm like, my wife looking at me like, really? I just want to know. We paid for boxing. I just need to know if it's working. But I remember it was the wrong response, but my flesh response was like, well, what happened? And he's like, I punched him. And I was like, well, what happened? And then he punched me back. And I was like, you ain't move? Like, hey, man. So I so desperately wanted to be like, hey, you swing until the threat is neutralized. Do not swing and wait to get hit back. Like, if you once you commit to the punch, you got to go the whole way. So you've committed. You've committed. Listen, I ain't trying to make you violent, but listen, if you ever have a moment in the flesh, you got to finish. Can't have a spiritual awakening after punch one. Like, you either need to get up out of there or finish it. Brother, you better listen to the Spirit before you throw the punch. And so, but I didn't say that part, because my wife was definitely looking at me with the weird face, like, hey, bro, you better be an example. And it's like, but that makes sense in the world. Ain't gonna be no sucker out here. But that's not godly wisdom. Right? The right wisdom that is godly wisdom is what I got to. Well, son, why did you punch him? Like, hey, listen, man, we're not no suckers, but we're not violent. Right? If was there a way for you to walk away? Could you have left the situation the way it was? Could you have not got involved in the situation? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, that's what we do first. Right? You only use your hands when you got no other choice. Outside of that, find another way. Right? And at some point, now that's what God would tell us to do. And so I'm saying that to say, like, we have to be mindful, especially as men raising men, for sure. Like, we got to make sure that what we telling them to do, is what God would want them to do. Right? We got to make sure that our ambitions for our children are the will of God for our children. And not just, well, this is what I want for them. Well, have you asked as the parent, as the one who God has given you life to steward, have you asked God, what is your plans for this life? Because if we haven't asked God what his plans is for the life of the children that we are raising, then we are raising them according to what we want for them. And our job is to steward their life, not to redirect God's will for their life. And so we have to make sure as fathers that we are leading them according to what God says. As fathers, we must ensure that in our pleading with our children to follow our instructions, we aren't causing them to forsake God's. Because we all know biblically, we know the passage in Acts 5 where Peter's like in 27 and 29, they told Peter, listen, stop talking about Jesus, right? They go back, talk about Jesus. They come back to jail. They said, didn't we tell you not to talk about Jesus? He said, listen, man, do we obey man or God? Say what you want, but we must obey God. So we know that any instruction that causes somebody to forsake God is not to be followed. Now, we know that, but have we ever applied that to our parental instructions to our children? Are we telling our children to do things that if God was talking to them, he would say, don't do that? Are we commanding or compelling our children to obey our instructions when they violate everything that God would say to do? Our children fall in the same boat that we fall into. They should not comply with any instruction that would violate God either. And so now you got kids in a what to do situation, especially if you read the Bible. You get them young kids, they come out of children's church, they're going to correct you. Well, I heard what you said, but God said. Now you sitting there like, what you going to do? Listen to me anyway and make them forsake God? Or are you going to check your instructions and make sure they're lining up with God? If you are a man of God, your responsibility is not to instruct from our flesh, but from the words of God, for that is how God calls us to instruct our children. Better let his children that he's told us to steward for a little while. Deuteronomy 6 and 7 says these words, which I am commanding to you today shall be on your heart, and you shall repeat them diligently to your sons and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Notice, God commands us to instruct our children in and according to the ways of God. Not the world, not ourselves, right? But in and according to his ways. But notice something else, because God doesn't start with telling them to teach their kids. It begins with saying that this command, this law should be on their own heart. He starts with the father's heart, the father's delight. He says, first, make sure that my laws are written on your heart. Right? Before God gives them a command to teach their children his word, he starts with calling for the fathers to walk in obedience to him. It's a movement from a private heart to the private heart of an individual to the outward desires of a community. As fathers, be sure that we are not just calling for obedience, but that we are demonstrating it also. See, if we desire for our children to hear us and obey our instructions, it starts with us and our desire to hear and obey God. We must be teachers in both word and deed. It's one thing to plea for obedience. It's another thing to demonstrate it. It's another thing to tell our children what it is that we want them to do. It's another thing to set an example of how to do it. And dads, if we desire for our children to hear us and obey our instructions, it starts with our desire to hear and obey God. We must be teachers in both word and deed. I was talking to this week, Nobes had me come out to speak at his all sports camp. And I was talking to a group of kids about reflecting God's glory. And in that, one of the things we talked about was the reality that do we recognize how when we teach people to do one thing and live contrary to what we teach, that we cause blaspheme to come upon God's name. Romans 2:22 and 24. You who say that one is not to commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who loathe idols, do you rob temples? You who boast in the law, though you are breaking the law, do you dishonor God? For the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you, just as it is written. That if we teach one thing and do another, it creates it brings a false indictment against God. And in the same way, as parents, when we instruct our children to live one way, to do one thing, and choose to live a different life, why would we expect them to actually desire to do it? We shouldn't. I know we do because we used to be like, well, I'm dad, but that's great. But that's not how we should be leading our households. We lead our households by being an example and then instructing them according to that example. To be a pleading father requires that we take responsibility for the lives we live in front of our children. Because I'm going to tell you like this. When somebody don't want to listen to you, they only need one example of you not doing what you said for them to use that for their reason not to do it either. That's kids, y'all, us, right? We just need one. We're like, well, you did. Well, what that got to? And then we want to be, what that got to? Just do what God said. Why you listen? Well, no, because it matters, right? And so when you got kids that don't want to listen anyway, they waiting. You all up in, you shout, you cuss, stop all that swear. You be cussing? I'm grown. What? That's the answer? No. Being grown don't give you an ability to be profane in your talk, not as a follower of Christ. And so you don't get to be like, well, when you get to adulthood, you can choose, but as a child, you can't. You get what I'm saying? And here's the thing. One thing we know, you can't hide who you is from your kids. They live with you. They know you lying. They know you ain't for real, for real. Be all godly on Sunday, and on Monday they like, wait till you see them. Wait. Wait till you leave church, though. Wait till you leave church, though. Leave a parking lot with the secular on. Hey, make it out the parking lot. Like, hey, you at least got down the street. We heard it, too. You lose your credibility when you don't live the life that you are instructing your children to live. Now, Solomon doesn't live this double life, right? But we did discuss that he lived this life already. He went through this life already. He knows the consequences of the decisions and the choices that he's made. And so even in one sense, even when he makes the plea, he's making the plea so that history doesn't repeat itself, right? Because a father's plea is also rooted in not repeating history. Right? It's my daughters, they have loved to do this to me, which is like, well, you used to do this or you used to do that, and it's like, good word, used to do. I say, somebody listening to a robot? Used to, right? But what example has I given you since Christ? Right? And because I used to, I also don't want you to repeat history. So I'm giving you wisdom and instructions because I actually know where this path goes. I walked this road. I lived this road. I traveled this road. Whatever you think, and I tell y'all too, even as fathers, I'm like, whatever you think you getting into, I've done it, and way worse than you have. Promise you that. And I can tell you it ain't going to work for you. Whatever you scheming, whatever you think, however clever you think you is, they all lead to the same place. Destruction. A lower quality of life. Now, can I be real for a quick second, though? Because as a father, I know this plea. I know this plea is rooted in a deep desire and a deep care and a deep concern. But also as a father, I also know that the plea also follows the heartbreak of the ignored instructions. It don't matter how hard we act. Well, they do whatever they want to do. They have to live with the consequences. That's just what we say. But a good father's heart breaks when their children experience avoidable consequences. No good father is okay when watching their children travel a path of destruction. We don't know how to talk. We don't, you know what I'm saying? So it don't come out right. It come off as anger, but trust me, underneath that is really just heartbreak. Underneath that is really a crushed heart of a father that's just like, all I wanted my child to do was listen. All I wanted my child to do was heed my instructions, and then we have to watch the consequences of an ignored instruction. And that hurts. Now, we'll never say it. We try. We do. But anger is typically the only emotion that comes out. We just get mad. We just yell. We just have a fussy fit, right? My daughters tell me that all the time. They be, especially my soon-to-be 20-year-old. She's like, why you just mad all the time? Be in my head like, because of you. But I remember she said that to me, and I was processing it one day, and I was like, all right, what's the real, because I have emotional intelligence, right? It goes out the window with the kids, though. But I'm like, yeah, why? Like, what's the real emotion here? Oh, okay, it's heartbreak. It's hurt. I'm like, but it's easier to just be angry than to be vulnerable. Especially when you already don't feel hurt. Right? And so a lot of times what is communicated or viewed as, oh, they angry, it's an emotion underneath that anger. It's hurt underneath that anger. It's pain underneath that anger. It's heartbreak underneath that anger. Because I'll put you on to another thing. Every time a father, I don't know who got big kids, but anytime a father has to watch their children go down a path that you did not set for them, it is not just heartbreak, but it is also the internalization of feeling like you failed as a parent. Understanding the weight and the responsibility that the Lord has given you. And having to sit back and watch a child go that way. And you know that, and you sit and you internalize, what did I not say? What could I have said different? What better way could I have? We internalize it, and we feel that as we have failed. These are real things that we deal with as parents, as fathers, that ain't always expressed because we don't know how to express it the right way. We don't want to be that vulnerable. I mean, even we do that yesterday, I think. What is yesterday? Yeah, I think it was yesterday. Yesterday, we was at dinner, and or Friday, one of them days, we was at dinner, breakfast, something. And my wife looked at me, and she said, hey. I'm like, what's up? She's like, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm all right. And she's like, all right, I'm just checking on you. She said, how you really feeling about just the transition of my daughter leaving and, doing stuff? And she's like, how you doing? And I was just like, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. But the reality is that's not how I'm feeling. I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling scared and defeated. I'm feeling lost and confused and all types of emotions as a father thinking about my child. But it's just easier to not be vulnerable and to just be like, I'm cool. It's all good. We cool. But at the end of the day, as fathers, we have to ask the question or choose to move from anger to vulnerability. Sometimes it's better just to have that hard conversation. Sometimes it's better to express the emotion instead of the pain. Sometimes it's better to let them hear your heart instead of your frustration. It may not change much, but at least the words that they have are how you feel for real, for real. But sometimes, again, we just don't know how to do that. We grow up, we don't know what it means to just be real and vulnerable. So we just yell. We just yell. Ah. But at the end of the day, the plea is rooted in a deep desire for our children to walk right and to avoid destruction. It's rooted in not wanting to see their paths destroyed. And I'm saying that because I just want to paint a very real picture of what this plea of a father is rooted in, that it's not just listen to us. It's rooted in a desire for our children to have a good quality of life. And I know, even when you yell, I just know I know. I see you. I know what you're really feeling like. And I guess I can go one more step. Because I have the unique role of being both a natural father and what they would call a spiritual father. Right? So I have this dual weight that I carry of pleading with my natural children to hear my words, and then pleading with the people God has given me to also hear my words. Right? So I feel the highs dually, and I feel the lows dually. And I know this whole idea of like spiritual fathers and all that stuff been perverted, and some people just did some very weird stuff with it. But the perversion don't mean it's not biblical. Right? To be a spiritual father refers to the teacher-student relationship and that thought, and that through the gospel, one becomes responsible for instructing another in the ways of the Lord. Paul says it this way in 1 Corinthians 4:14. He says, I do not write these things to shame you, but to admonish you as my beloved children. And that idea of admonish, it speaks to give counsel about avoidance or the cessation or the ceasing of an improper act or action. So he says his counsel to them is like that of a father to his child. Right? In the same way that Solomon says, listen to my instructions as he counsels him to avoid and cease an improper action, Paul says, listen, as my beloved children, I'm admonishing you for the same reason, to help you to avoid and to cease moving in an improper way. Then he says in 15 and 16, for if you were to have countless tutors in Christ, yet you would have not many fathers, for in Christ Jesus I became your father through the gospel. And this speaks to the point that Paul is saying he carries this special relationship with those whom he gives oversight of. That through faith, he shares this intimate and deep burden and desire and care, and that he said, my instructions flow from love. It flows from desire. It flows from a deep concern. And he says, so what I need you to do is be imitators of me. Same thing that Solomon. Spiritual dads or whatever you want, we got to follow the same rule, right? We don't get to give instructions and not live the life that we instruct. And Paul says, imitate me, right? You're going to be all over the place, DJ. I'm all over the place, right? He going to say, imitate me, right? Imitate me in how? Listen to what I'm saying. And because he even says it, he goes on towards the end of it, and he says in verse 1 Corinthians 4:17, he says, for this reason, I sent to you Timothy, who is my beloved and my faithful child in the Lord, and he will remind you of the ways which are in Christ, just as I teach everywhere in the church. He says, be an imitator of me. And he says, and how do you imitate me? Here's my instructions, and here's my life. Same responsibility that a natural father has to instruct his children in the way of life and to be an example of that. Paul says, as spiritual fathers, those who has been given care of people's spiritual life, all supposed to have that same responsibility to instruct and to demonstrate. And so, the many heavy burdens in my life is that I had 5 children, but I inherited a whole bunch of spiritual ones. which is a beautiful thing. And it's a burden. Right? It's a beautiful thing and it's a burden. Why? Because Paul says in 2 Corinthians 11:28, apart from these external things, there is the daily pressure on me of concern for all the churches. Paul says, I got a life going on out here. And I have a daily concern for every church that I've planted, every church that I lead. In other words, I got a family who is my priority. And I have a church that can't be neglected. Right? When God calls us to be elders, he places a dual responsibility. This is why when people be like, oh, the pastor is off, that stuff, that boundary conversation y'all be having on social media, that only works because you work for an employer. It don't work when God has called an elder overseer to be a father. You don't get to just say, hey, kid, I'm off today. Deal with your stuff. I know that's what they telling. That ain't reality. That's why pastors don't have off days for real. Because kids mess up all the time. They always into something. Even when I'm on my Sabbath day, they'll be like, it's your Sabbath rest day. I was like, I got 4 kids in my house. No, it ain't. They still getting into something. I still got to be a dad always. And in the same way, I still got to be a pastor and a shepherd always. I don't get to turn it on and off. You can't come before my natural children, but you also can't be neglected. Right? And so it's this dual thing. It is, and the reality is, just like I know the heartbreak of my natural children, I know the heartbreak of y'all. Pouring into hours of instructions for it to not be heeded and then have to watch the domino effect of ignored instruction. That ain't cool either. My wife know. She know my nights. She know the reflection, and I present like it's all good, but my wife know that stuff deeply wounds and deeply bothers me. Why? Because I'm a real shepherd. I really care. I really pour my life into your life with the same desire that I have for my children. I just want your life to avoid avoidable pitfalls. As a spiritual father, putting you first is walking in obedience with God so that you'll have an example. Right? Hebrews 13:7. Remember those who lead you, who spoke the word of God to you, and considering the results of their life, imitate their faith. Imitate their faith. Same thing. Give them a faith to follow. It's not just listen to me. It's consider my life. And so as spiritual fathers, in the same way as a natural father, we got to be sure, and I'm talking to our elders in the room, we got to be sure that our plea is not rooted in do as I say only, yet do as I say and as I do. Same rules apply. So the same heartbreak applies, both natural and spiritual. Just like Solomon, his instructions were rooted in a desire to guide and protect his son, and the same thing of a father's instructions. But then he says in Proverbs 6:21, bind them continually on your heart. Tie them around your neck. And this is critical because we keep things close to our heart that we treasure as valuable. And so a father's plea is that you would see our words as not just a good talk or dad talking again, but as a value voice for the path of your life. Right? As a father, we want our words to be more impactful than a podcaster. Right? And then a teacher, then your neighbor. Right? That's both natural and spiritual. Right? We don't want to just have a good talk. We want to have some valuable conversations with you. Things that would allow you to treasure deeply and take with you as you go and navigate this life. Right? We don't want our words to be wasted, go in one ear and out the other ear. We want them to be treasured. I love, one of the things I loved about my wife and her grandmother who passed away. My wife, every time my wife loved to sit and listen to every word that her grandmother spoke. Because this is a woman who had 60 plus years of faithfulness to Christ. Walking with the Lord faithfully, a lot of wisdom in there. And the words that her grandmother spoke, she treasured. And she uses them to navigate her life as a godly woman, as a discipler, as a wife, as a mother. Right? She remembers, she put those words in her heart so that she would be led by those things when life begins to happen. And as a father, that is our plea to our children. Just take our words, even if it don't apply today. Treasure it in your heart, because life will deal you something that these words will matter. He says in verse 22, when you walk, they will guide you. When you sleep, they will watch over you. When you awake, they will talk to you. And a guide, when you walk, is like follow the leader. Like, you know, me and my wife we just out of town, the country, whatever you want to say. And we, you know, we don't know where we're going. And so whenever we don't know where we're going, I don't necessarily always have my wife walk. She don't necessarily walk side by side with me. She always walk like a pace behind me. Why? Because we don't know where we're going. Right? So I might grab her hand, or she might be real close. And I'm leading. Why? Because I'm navigating us through these unknown places. So as long as I'm navigating us through, she's walking behind. And the objective is, if I'm not falling into a pit, neither should she. Because I'm guiding us through the crowds and through this city or through whatever it is that's going on. Now, if I look back and she gone off the cliff, somebody didn't follow right. Can't blame me. I'm not off the cliff. So that means you didn't walk behind me. Solomon says his words, his instructions, when you walk, they will guide. If you follow them, they will keep you away from avoidable, say avoidable, pitfalls. When you sleep, being watched over, it doesn't refer to your dreams. It's just another way to express you will be guarded. Even you can rest peacefully. When you wake, he says they will talk to you, which means they will give you counsel as you go. The point is, a father's plea to comply is a heartfelt request to let his words and wisdom guide and protect you. That's it. That's the natural and the spiritual. And it's important because life is a journey through a dark landscape at times. For the kingdom of darkness is real and it's opposing the kingdom of light. So contrary to popular belief, the goal of our instructions is not to make your life miserable as children or boring as spiritual children. The goal of a father's instruction is to help you navigate living in a dark world in a way that honors God or the God that we serve. Proverbs 6:23, for the commandment is a lamp, and the teaching is a light, and rebukes for discipline are the way of life. Remember, this is step parallelism, right? The lamp was the light, and the commandment was the teaching, right? The lamp, though, allows a person to navigate through the dark and have a safe path. It illuminates so that you won't walk into a pit. This is a father's plea. This is the weight behind it and the reason for it, for his child to avoid avoidable destruction in their lives. This is your pastor's heart for you to have so that you avoid avoidable, say avoidable, destruction in your lives. But one of the things I always tell people, I say, you know, like, especially like on the spiritual side, like natural side, a little bit different. But on the spiritual side, I'm like, like, your fall don't really impact me, right? Like, it's different with my kids. Like, no, that really cost me. Like, I really had to pay that bill. Like, I really had to fix the car. Like, you know, like, like, I really had to front that bill. I really got to. So, but as on the spiritual side, it affects me here, but your consequences don't actually affect my house. Why do I say that? Because I'm not just telling you it for no reason. Because realistically, it don't affect me. So why am I taking the time out to sacrifice and to talk and to share and to pour out? For no other reason than there is a deep concern to see your life going the right way. Because if it doesn't, I still am not affected in my home. You understand what I'm trying to say? So when I'm trying to tell you to walk the path of avoidable, say avoidable, pitfalls, it is from a heart place, not a domineering place. Not that you just want to tell us what to do, play. I don't actually want to. My wife will tell you, I process a long time before I know stuff way before. I don't say everything when I know it. I know it way before I say something. I process 2 to 3 days. Do I even want to say something? Like, Lord, why another? I don't want it. Why I got to say it? I'd be like, well, let me just see what happened. Maybe you'll say it to him first. And then eventually I'll be like, look, my wife, I'm like, I don't say it. Like, I don't really want to. Let's be clear. But I do it not because I want to control your life, but because I want to see your life walk with the Lord the way that he desires it, right? Even in rebuke, the goal is not to produce death but life. Now, can I add another little piece? Y'all, that makes sense? Let me add another piece. Because I know some of you probably paid attention that in verse 20, Solomon says, my son, comply with my commandments and don't ignore your mother's teaching. And, of course, I skipped right over that because it's Father's Day. It's not about you. But there's something I want us to see there, though. Because at the end of the day, when Solomon says that, what is he doing? He's supporting the voice of a mother in the life of a child. He's elevating her voice in his child. Don't just listen to me. Your mother's voice is as valuable as my instruction. So heed hers as well. And so for mothers, here's my only plea to you. In the same way a father supports your voice in the family, give his voice that same support. Tell your children, I know, that's okay, feel it there. Just do it, don't clap, do it. We know the reality. Good fathers still, good fathers. Some, okay, let me clarify it there. I'm like, I ain't supporting that voice yet, so you shouldn't. But we all know, in my house, it annoys my wife. Sometimes it annoys me when I feel like being bothered. When I don't feel like being bothered, it don't annoy me. But it annoys my wife because my kids are coming in the room. It's two things. Either they walk back out because they bust in my room and they know they're supposed to knock first, right? So they come in the room, and I'm like, what do you want? And they be like, where's mommy? And I'm like, I don't know. And they be like, I'm like, what you want? I want a snack. I'm going to ask mommy. And they close the door back. They go find her to ask her for a snack. And I always hear she's like, why didn't you just ask your dad? So when I don't want to be bothered, I'm like, yeah, go ask her. But then when I want to be bothered, I'm like, why you ain't ask me? Why you ain't talk to me? But the reality is, we know, like, children sometimes, they just feel more comfortable for whatever reason going to the mom. And so as fathers, we support that voice. But at the same time, one of the things that I love my wife always does, whether I want her to or not, is she always turns it right back to my voice. And she always says, talk to your dad about that. What does your dad say about that? I don't know. I need to talk to your dad about this. Right? She brings it right back to say, hey, you don't get, I'm not the one that's giving the instructions alone in this house. This is a parental unit. And what he say matters as much, if not more. That's I don't want to traumatize nobody, but I leave my house, right? But my only, all I'm asking, moms, make sure if there's a healthy, good, present father, that you support that father's voice. You support his instructions in the life of your child. Listen to your dad on this. What does your dad say? Reaffirm it, right? Because they talking to you anyway. Don't let them come to you and you be like, yeah, you don't know. Like that continues the trend of making sure that our words won't be heard, won't be seen, won't be valued. So let's get out of here. I was vulnerable today on purpose because dads all across the world wrestle with feeling unappreciated, not feeling seen. right? And I wanted to take this day to give a father's heart. A father's heart, obviously from Solomon, but also just because I'm a dad. I've been a dad for 20 years. I've been a pastor for 11 years, right? I know it on both sides of the conversation. I know what's really in the heart of good fathers. And my prayer and my hope is that you all, as children, would not just look at dad as the enforcer voice, but look at dad as a voice of wisdom, of knowledge, of application, right? Sit down and just be like, hey, Dad, can I talk to you real quick? What's your thoughts about this? Nothing makes me more happy than when my kids ask me my thoughts. Now, because my communication is not always the best, sometimes I just get frustrated in that conversation, and I'll be like, I'm over it, right? But nothing, because it's like, oh, you want my opinion? Oh, well, you want to go get something to eat? Let's talk about this. I've got something to say. Oh, yeah, right? Let me feel good, like, oh, you want my opinion? My wife know. Like, y'all don't know in our household. My wife know. My wife will tell you, like, yeah, he really, I'd be a mess in the house. Nobody want to talk to me. I know the answer, too. But until I'm busy, then I'm like, stop talking to me. I'm working on it. But consider Father's words and make his joy complete by following after his good and godly instructions for your life. And for Reach, this applies to my plea towards you all. One of the things that kind of, it was like a weird feeling. I didn't know, joy or cringe. I'm not really sure. Let me finish my sentence before you react to what I say first. It's a couple weeks ago, Coretta was preaching. And one of the things she said, I was in the booth, and she was like, she shouted me out, and she said, I live to make you proud. And I was back there, and I was live to make God proud. But I wrestled with it back and forth because I also know what she means, right? As somebody who's been around for a while, right? I know what she means. In other words, so I felt in the same sense an appreciation of thank you. Because it's like, thank you for saying, hey, I live my life not to make your words empty. Not to ignore the time you spend on the phone and talking to me and praying with me and counseling me through different situations. Like, I don't just hang up and want, like I actually do want to not make your words be in vain. And so I was like, so I accepted it. But at the end of the day, as your pastor, for those who are pastor here, that's it for me. The thing that keeps me coming back week to week and day to day and sacrificing every bit of time I got, sacrifices y'all would never even know that is being made, and the effects on our family that those sacrifices cost us. But the thing that keeps me coming back and doing it repeatedly is just simply the yes that you guys make. And it's not perfect, but it's effort. It's a striving, it's a trying, it's a desiring. Right? It's the joy of my beloved knucklehead AD here. Heeding the words of this year and being able to watch all of the blessings that's taking place in his life. It's like, man, that's all I do this for. Dang it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Because now if I don't go through every single person. If I ain't say y'all, just know I love y'all. Y'all make me happy too. Right? Erica buying her first house, and she ain't here though. And that journey and just the life of her from 2022 coming and just seeing what God, like, that's what makes me keep doing this. Right? It's when my kids hear me and they listen and I see the fruit of their life. That's what makes me as a father smile and be excited about, oh, it's all worth it. And so for you who are children, make sure that you make the sacrifice of your father worth it. The time of your father worth it. Ask them, sit down, ask some questions. I told y'all some real hard stuff. If you ain't ever heard that before, ask them how they really feel. Ask them to share their real heart with you. But make it worth it. And for you who are here at Reach or whatever church you go to, if you are sitting under good leadership, man, make their sacrifice worth it. It's not going to be perfect, but put some shit, try. Because that's all we can ever ask, is that you just try. So that's my time. Happy Father's Day.